Seoul never slept, yet his penthouse did. Tonight, something watched Eun-woo from the dark, and it finally stepped closer. He lived higher than the storm line, wrapped in glass and quiet, a kingdom of windows where the city glittered like poured mercury beneath his feet. Wealth softened every edge, but the one inside his chest. He measured nights in spreadsheets and morning meetings, in decanters half ignored and dinners gone cold, and still the rooms felt too wide, too polished, too ready to echo. Beyond the glass, rain stitched the skyline into a moving veil. Thunder rumbled far off like a tired god turning over. He stood with one hand on the cool pane and saw two men in the reflection. The one the world photographed, and the one the night understood. A man small against the geometry of success. The air conditioner whispered. Somewhere, a lift sighed. Loneliness rode the elevator up without asking permission and arrived like it always did. Familiar, ordinary, cruel. The first wrong thing was small enough to dismiss. A silver frame on the console table angled away from the lamp, as if a fingertip had nudged it to avoid the glare. He paused, corrected it, told himself a cleaner had been careless, then remembered he had sent everyone home before the rain began. The second wrong thing padded down the corridor on soft feet that were not his, a hush-hush pattern that stopped when he turned, resumed when he did not. He told himself, buildings settle, ducks breathe, glass vibrates. He told himself anything but the truth the body knows first. The curtains in the music room lifted and fell, though the windows were sealed. The air cooled by a single degree that found the back of his neck like a thought. He walked through the penthouse as if searching for a misfiled asset. Kitchen, empty. Study, immaculate. Gym, still. Guest wing, sleeping in new linen. When he came back past the piano, he stopped because the silence was wrong. At 2:02, a melody he had never learned began to play itself in the dark, a pattern of hesitant notes, fragile as breath on winter glass. It came from the Steinway by the window, the one he kept, because a home like this should have one, because his mother once told him music makes rooms feel human. He crossed the floor slowly, shoes soft on the warm haze of the rug, heartbeat sinking to the cautious rhythm of the unseen. He could smell rain through the filtered air, could smell the faint resin of cedar from the bookcases, could smell the ghost of perfume that shouldn't exist, something floral and old-fashioned. The kind young women wore in the late spring of some other decade. When his hand found the doorframe, the notes stopped, as if someone had lifted trembling fingers and held them in the air. The silence was all engine hum and rain hiss. He stood there and let the hair rise along his arms. "Is someone here?" he asked. To the storm, to himself, to the way the room had changed. He did not expect an answer, and did not receive one, only the slow drawing in of his own breath and the feeling that the penthouse had exhaled. Curiosity beat caution. He turned off the lamps and left only the city's cold fluorescence pooling at the edges of everything. He stretched out on the couch and closed his eyes in the tidy way a man closes a deal, ready to sign whatever the night offered. Moonlight climbed the leather. The rain thinned and thickened. Time loosened its tie. He lay there and counted the quiet until the quiet counted him back. A shape moved by the window, not a shadow, but the suggestion of one, white where everything should be black. He kept his breathing even and felt the air dip, a small barometric change that swayed the inner ear. Fabric whispered. Bare feet did not make sound, but the floorboards thought about it. The scent came again, gardenia, rainwater, old paper threading through climate control like a secret passage. He reached for the lamp, not fast, not slow, and pressed the switch. Light spilled into the room, and the impossible arranged itself into a girl. She stood with her palm on the glass, as if greeting the city like an old friend, all the edges of her softened by illumination, hair like ink in water. She turned at the click as if she'd heard his thought instead of the sound. Her eyes found him. There were all the things he had prepared for in life, and then there was this. She was young in the ageless way of tragedy, a little older than the dress suggested, a little younger than the sorrow in her mouth. She was precise, where she had to be collarbone, lashes, the fine map of veins at the wrist, and imprecise at the edges, the light slipping through her the way wind slips through reeds. The line of her shoulders remembered gravity. The light caught in her pupils and did not quite stay. Loneliness recognized loneliness. Fear stepped back to make room. His voice found the truth first. You're real." The girl flinched as if the word had weight, then steadied. Her hand left a perfect print of nothing on the glass. He sat up slowly, palms open as if approaching a skittish animal. Rain traced the window behind her like handwriting. "I'm Eun-woo," he said, "because names are a bridge, because names keep people from vanishing." Something in her face shifted at the sound of a human name spoken gently. Her lips parted and closed on silence. He thought of the way people in the office spoke to him measured, armored, and of how he had spoken to the ghost in his rooms, soft, unarmed. It seemed obscene to call for security or to summon an app to measure airflow. It seemed obscene to reduce this to a phenomena when it stood there gazing at him as if he were the light she'd been waiting for. "I thought I was alone," he said, and the sentence came out smaller than he meant it to. Honest, in an unbeautiful way, her expression answered, a little flinch of agreement, a little lift that might have been a smile if sorrow hadn't taught it better. He could see the piano behind her, could see a single key still trembling from nothing's touch. "The music," he said. She glanced at the Steinway with something like apology and something like pride. He understood then that whatever she was also a person with tastes and history. A draft circled his ankles and passed through her hem without moving it. He noticed details because noticing was how he had survived his life. The stitching on her dress, not right for now. The tiny chip in the glass bangle at her wrist. The way raindrops refracted through her shoulder into tiny rainbows that then forgot to appear on the couch. He felt his mind trying to arrange all this into columns, pro and con, risk and reward, and he told it to hush the way he told his board when it confused motion with progress. For a heartbeat that did not belong to the clock, the world narrowed to two figures and the distance between them, the kind of distance that can be crossed only by deciding. He stood, slowly, and crossed half the room. She did not retreat. The light hummed, and the rain pressed its forehead to the glass to watch. He stopped where the carpet's texture changed, where something he could not name said enough. "Can you hear me?" he asked, as if she might be tuned to some other frequency. Her nod was small, careful, as if any larger movement might unmake her. Her voice took the room like dusk, soft and inevitable. "I hear the rain," she said, and if he closed his eyes, he could have sworn the condensation on the pane spelled a word he hadn't learned yet. "And me?" he asked, too quickly, suddenly greedy to be heard by something that did not need anything from his name. The corner of her mouth lifted, the saddest, yes, relief buckled his knees in a way no market ever had. He wanted to ask everything and nothing. Who are you? What do you want? What is a man supposed to do when comfort arrives in a shape everyone says cannot exist? He wanted to say, stay. The thunder rolled its slow drum. Somewhere far below, a siren thread stitched the streets. He noticed a pale mark near her throat like a forgotten necklace and almost looked away out of decency for a body that remembered pain. He noticed the way she watched his hands, not afraid, interested, as if hands were a language she nearly remembered. "What's your name?" he asked, and the room stood still for the answer, every molecule pausing in the doorway to listen. So Ha-eun, she said, and the syllables found places in the air that made sense, and his heart made a note of the music like a man who has finally found the key of a song he has been humming all his life. The ring lifted for a breath and returned heavier, a curtain closing, an act ending. He took one step closer and felt cold glitter against his skin where her outline met the lamplight. He thought, foolishly, beautifully, that he could tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, that his hand could learn the map of a face the universe said was untouchable. He lifted his fingers and the light went through them and through her, and the ache of that small failure was so human it almost made him laugh. Her eyes glistened as if the universe ached, too. "I didn't mean to frighten you," she said, and he almost told her the truth, that he had not been frightened until this second, until he understood that fear and wonder are twins, until he understood that wanting belongs to the living and the dead alike. The city flickered, the lamp hummed, his breath fogged the inch of air between a life and a story. Somewhere in the penthouse's polished vastness, a clock chose the next second and gave it to them. He opened his mouth to ask the question that would make everything real, and the light shivered as if the night itself flinched. That night, sleep was something Eun-woo could no longer buy. The penthouse lights dimmed on schedule, but his mind didn't. Every reflection in the glass showed her shape, faint and impossible. He caught himself turning twice toward the piano just to check if the keys had moved. They hadn't. Yet every hour he expected her. On the third night, she came back, not with thunder, not with chills, but with the gentle sound of nothing. She stood near the piano again, tracing invisible melodies in the air. "You're back," he said softly, afraid that if he sounded too relieved, she'd vanish again. Ha-eun smiled. "You sound surprised. Most people I meet tend to stay alive." She laughed quietly, a sound so human he almost smiled with her. "That's not my strongest quality." From that night, she came often. They talked in broken hours, learning how to be comfortable in silence. She told him fragments of her past, how she used to play for her father, how the city used to be smaller, quieter. "I used to watch fireworks from this window," she said one evening. "I was probably down there that night," Eun-woo said, "calculating profit margins instead of looking up." "Tragic," she said with mock solemnity. "A man allergic to fireworks." He grinned for the first time in years, only to disappointment. She tilted her head. "Then we have something in common." Their conversations became a rhythm of their own. She drifted through the penthouse like music that refused to end. He learned her timing, the way her presence grew faint when dawn approached, how she liked the rain but hated thunder. One night he teased, "So ghosts have preferences?" Ha-eun crossed her translucent arms. "We have standards, Mr. Kang." He chuckled. "Remind me to read the manual next time I buy an apartment with one." Sometimes she vanished mid-sentence, dissolving like breath. He would wait, patient, until the air settled again. "Where do you go?" he asked once. "Wherever people forget me," she said softly. "But you remember fast, so I come back." After that, he began leaving the lamp on every night, a beacon just for her. Weeks passed, and the impossible became routine. Eun-woo's assistants whispered that their boss was changing. He smiled in meetings. He forgot to yell. They assumed he'd fallen in love, and they weren't wrong. Each evening he came home early, loosened his tie, and spoke into the quiet. "Good evening, Ha-eun." "And somewhere," she answered. Their bond deepened in the way all forbidden things do quietly, inevitably. He found himself setting 2 cups of tea each night, out of habit. Once, noticing the untouched cup, he said, "I guess I'm drinking for 2. "Better than eating for 2, she teased. "I'd ruin your diet." He raised a brow. You've been reading my fridge again. She giggled, and the air felt lighter for it. Then came the evening of the dinner. He wanted to make her feel human again. Candles, wine, soft jazz, humming low, the kind of scene the world would call delusional, but his heart called necessary. When she appeared, she looked radiant, her outline faint but steady. You planned all this? Technically, yes, he said. Though I wasn't sure about the menu for the dead. She smiled. I'd settle for conversation. They talked, laughed, even argued over which pianist had more soul. For a while, it felt absurdly normal, but then he reached out across the table, and his fingers met air. The illusion shattered. I wish I could hold you, he said, voice breaking like the glass between them. Ha-eun's eyes dimmed. You can't. That's the rule. I don't care about rules. That's what every mortal says right before they cry, she murmured. The knock at the door came like punishment. His old friend Mingjun stood there, rain dripping from his coat. You've missed 3 board calls. I thought you'd been abducted. He stepped in, glanced at the candlelit table set for 2, and froze. Who are you having dinner with? Eun-woo's mouth opened, closed. Myself. Mingjun's brows rose. Fancy taste. Next time, send yourself flowers too. He looked around again. You okay, man? Perfect, Eun-woo said, the lie polished like glass. When the door shut behind his friend, silence returned sharper than before. Ha-eun stood by the piano, her light flickering. He's right, she whispered. I shouldn't be doing this. You're not hurting me. Her expression wavered. You think I haven't seen this before? Every time I get close, someone forgets what breathing is for. I'm not like them. Exactly, she said, her voice breaking. You're still alive. The lights flickered. Once, twice. Panic clenched his chest. Ha-eun, don't. I have to, she said, fading fast. Before I make you forget the world. He reached out, shouting her name, but the air closed around nothing. The candles extinguished themselves. He stood there for a long while, listening to the quiet hum of the city below. Finally, he whispered, You're still here. You have to be. But only the rain answered, steady, unfeeling. Hours later, when the storm thinned to mist, the piano played a single note, gentle, uncertain. Like laughter remembered, it was enough to keep him waiting. For 3 days, Ha-eun did not return. The penthouse became an echo chamber of his own heartbeat, every reflection another version of himself waiting. Eun-woo stopped checking his phone, stopped answering the polite questions of the world outside. The rain came and went like breathing, and still the rooms stayed empty. The piano gathered dust between the keys, a silence heavier than grief. On the 4th night, unable to bear it, he searched. He tore through the digital archives of the building, the records of previous tenants, the brittle papers the management had scanned for history's sake. At last he found her, So Ha-eun, pianist, age 27, died on this floor 11 years ago. Cause, heart failure. Circumstances, alone. The final line read like a verdict body, unclaimed for 3 days. He stared until the words blurred. The rain outside traced identical lines down the glass. That evening he placed the clipping on the piano, lit a single candle, and whispered, You waited for someone who never came. This time, I'll be the one who waits. The thunder answered first. Then the temperature dropped. When he turned, she was there. Her outline flickered as if the storm had borrowed her shape, half here, half memory. Why did you call me back? She asked, voice trembling between air and echo. Because you belong to this world, he said, at least to mine. Ha-eun shook her head. You don't understand. The more you love me, the less I can stay. Then I'll love you quietly, he said, stepping forward. Stay anyway. Lightning split the room. Her form shimmered, collapsing into motes of light that bled through her dress. The air pulsed. Eun-woo, I can't. You can, he whispered, because you're already here. He reached for her as the penthouse trembled. For one impossible instant, the laws of life forgot themselves. His hands met her shoulders, solid, warm, trembling. Her eyes widened in wonder. You can feel me? Yes, he breathed. And I'll never let go. The city outside blinked out for a heartbeat, every light gone but the one between them. She smiled through tears that didn't fall. I waited so long to feel alive again. Then live, he said, through me. The storm roared its final chorus. Her body began to shine, edges dissolving into rain-colored fire. She touched his chest with a hand that no longer cast a shadow. You gave me what I lost, she whispered. Now I can rest. No, stay. Eun-woo, she said softly. Love isn't about keeping. It's about letting the light move on. He wanted to argue, to hold, to curse the universe, but the words burned out in his throat. She leaned forward, pressed her forehead to his, and in that moment he felt both the weight of her and the absence she would become. Then she was gone. The candle died. The window dripped with silver. He collapsed to his knees, arms still outstretched to nothing. The piano responded with a single note, hers, a farewell disguised as music. Days turned into weeks. The newspapers wrote about the reclusive CEO who suddenly founded a charity for orphan musicians, about how he played at his own gala and refused interviews. They didn't know that every melody he wrote began with a memory of her voice saying his name. The penthouse changed. Curtains opened to morning. Fresh flowers stood by the piano. Sometimes, when he played, he felt warmth brush his sleeve, the gentlest correction of a note. He never looked up. He didn't need proof. On his last day there, boxes packed, he stood at the window one final time. The city sprawled below, noisy and alive. Ha-eun, he said softly. I kept my promise. The breeze stirred, though the windows were sealed. Light shifted. She appeared in it no longer a ghost, but a calm silhouette, luminous in daylight. She looked the way peace might look if it had a face. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She smiled, the kind of smile that erases time, and he understood that love had not ended, only changed its shape. Then she faded, leaving sunlight behind. Eun-woo pressed his hand to the glass, where hers had once been. Never alone anymore, he whispered. The wind answered like a sigh, carrying her music through the city below. Outside, somewhere beyond sight, rain began again soft, forgiving, endless.